Good morning and welcome to Paul T's World. It's been a wild spring. It's been cold, it's been windy and it's been wet, but the plants keep growing. In this video we'll do a tour of my garden in late April. Now my subscribers may have noticed that my videos have not been particularly regular this last 6 months, and that's for 2 or 3 reasons. I've been away doing my day job, I've been on holiday, and I've had a little problem with my foot, which has meant that I haven't been able to do any gardening, and so I haven't been caring for the garden as much as I normally would. So we'll have a look and see what the garden does when it's left to its own devices. Now this is interesting. I've done a number of videos on pruning back hydrangeas, and normally we do this in early spring, and this particular mophead hydrangea, I haven't pruned it back, I haven't deadheaded it, I've done absolutely nothing. And this shows exactly what happens if you don't do anything with a big leaf hydrangea. Basically, it gets on with life as per normal. So at any time, I can just come and just deadhead this hydrangea. In fact, some people never deadhead their hydrangeas if they're really large and they can't access them. They'll flower just the same. Next to the hydrangea, we've got the azaleas. And these are the absolutely gorgeous deciduous azaleas. They smell beautifully. We've got that colour. The colours are so vibrant. This is on a very overcast day and still the colours look good. Those are the deciduous azaleas. They tend to grow taller. And of course, being deciduous, they do lose their leaves in winter. Whereas here we have the evergreen azaleas. This one is of course past its best. I've got azaleas all round the garden and they tend to flower at slightly different times. And in fact, we've got one here that is about to flower. Look at that. It's going to be absolutely covered in blooms. Gorgeous. Another couple here. This one's to come out and this one is halfway out. The contorted hazel with its lovely fresh greens. And at the back here by the hedgerow, we've got all the bluebells. Now in my garden, bluebells actually are quite invasive. I've got to dig them out of some of the beds. There's blue ones and white ones there. The Pittosporum shrub has really put on a lot of growth this last few years. It's looking good, and in fact, it's got little flowers. And above it is the red robin, Photinia. The new leaves are red. Once these leaves have started to go green, I'll simply cut them back here. And then they'll grow some more leaves that'll be red through the summer. Let's have a look at this bed along the roadside. I call this the road bed. And underneath these various large shrubs have lots of hellebores. They self-seed. It's becoming quite an interesting bed, this, right next to the road. I've got the Brunnera, flowers early, an evergreen shrub here, and the oak leaf hydrangea. It's about 2 or 3 years old now, that hydrangea. I split the Brunnera last year, so here are 1 or 2 of where I've split it, because I want the Brunnera to come right along here. I've planted some hostas and the ajuga I got from my sister, so that's looking good. I want that to be some ground cover. The hardy geranium, this is Suzanne, it'll start looking pretty in another month or 2. Oh, and I also brought some lamium over from the back garden, again for ground cover. Another Brunnera. And hosta. I want all the soil covered with ground cover and shrubs. This is a paniculata cutting from last year. An old English plant, lords and ladies. Glorious red berries, I think quite poisonous, that one. Another hydrangea cutting from a couple of years ago. And I've split the geranium Suzanne. So I've got it here, and I've got a little one here. And let's move now up the front garden to the upper terrace and also that hydrangea border with the azaleas and see how they're doing. Now, I bought a really cheap car cover from Aldi, it might have been Lidl, for about £12, because in the spring all the sap coming from the various trees actually make a mess of the car. So I popped that on now, although I bought something a little bit more expensive that's designed for the car. Now let's go up the steps and see what we can see. And here we have the bed that's alongside the steps that lead up to the house. And I've got various azaleas here. These are evergreen azaleas. Some of the paniculatas seem to start later on in the year, much later than the mopheads and the lace caps, the big leaf hydrangeas. The wedding cake tree is going to start flowering shortly. I think I'll plant more hostas in this bed. Fill it up. I have attempted to put a mulch over, bark, but the foxes and the cats and the blackbirds constantly throw the bark onto the pathway. I do like the hostas coming up so early in the spring. Oh, I've got a lavender here. This lavender is self-seeded there, so I'll pot that one up. These are all the different azaleas that I planted along the front here. Oh, it's a bit of a windy day today, and in fact it's going to rain later on, which my garden needs. It's based on sand, and so it gets very dry very quickly. And here's a pretty one. Look at this. In fact, I think that's a little rhododendron. Pyrrhus looked great early on in the year. It's forest flame, and so these leaves at the top are beautifully red early on in the season, assuming there isn't a frost to knock them back. I cut this candy tuft back a little bit. It was hanging right down to the pathway, right over the wall, which I like. I've wanted to put a light here. It's one of these solar lights that work really well, SPV solar lights, so people don't trip up on the steps. But now this candy tuft is going to start growing back and hanging over the wall. And if we just move over to the other side of the pathway, I do like this euonymus gold one. Always gives a splash of colour at all times of the year, which is great, particularly in the front garden. And those cuttings, just look at those cuttings. These are all lace caps, aren't they, from various friends. They're nice lace caps, those. And of course, this was a cutting from about 7 years ago, a cutting from a hydrangea in the back garden. And there are the flower buds starting. I'm pleased with the Weigela, the variegated one. It's setting its buds. They'll be out quite early, and it's growing quite high, and I wanted high. I wanted just to disguise this garage a little bit. It's a flat roof garage. Another cutting, lace cap hydrangea, looking good. We're just passing through the upper part of the front garden. We'll just have a look at this azalea. I had this in a pot. If you look at one of my videos, azalea videos of a year or two ago, this was in a pot and it was getting rather large for the pot. So I simply transferred it into the ground. And there's another one of these euonymus, nice big splash of colour. Just before we go and have a look at this glorious clematis I've got growing up the house, we'll just have a look at those cuttings. Do you remember those paniculata, hydrangea paniculata cuttings I did last year? In fact, it was, I think, November, was it, or December last year? We'll see how they're doing and just look at this choicea. These choiceas, they do get bitten a little bit by the frost, but they don't mind. They grow again, they come back, and they start flowering. The leaves are not looking great at the moment because it's been such a cold spring, but new leaves will come through. It'll look glorious in a couple of months, and it's going to flower anyway. A great plant, this Choicea ternata. It's bright, it's big, and it's beautiful. Now let's have a look at these cuttings. Let's see how they're doing. So what have we got here? We've got little leaves coming here. So most of those have got leaves. I have pulled 2 or 3 out. Now I don't get fooled when there are leaves. That does not necessarily mean that there are roots. Hopefully in a couple of months I'll pull 1 or 2 out and just see if they've got any roots and I can pot them up. Well, we've got those brugmansias. These are the ones that were in the garage over the winter, and they haven't been happy with these temperatures. They've tried to grow new little leaves here, as you can see, but each time they start growing some leaves, the overnight temperatures are just too cold for them. I think they'll survive, but it's going to be a long road this year with the brugmansias. The Paul Scarlet Climbing Rose, I actually cut it right back, as you can see here. I cut it back about 5-6 feet just to reinvigorate it, and it's starting to grow, and it will flower quite nicely this year. So let's move over to this clematis. It performs so well every year. It's Clematis Avalanche. It's an evergreen clematis. And a few videos ago I said I didn't know what to do with this, how to deal with it. Well, I think now, after a little bit of trial and error, I know what to do with this clematis. After it's flowered, finished flowering, I'll cut it back by about 2/3. I'll give it a feed and some water because it's in a pot. It's quite a big pot, but these clematises aren't really keen on pots, but I'm just keeping it going. And then it'll grow the stems back again. In fact, I'll cut these stems by 2/3, all the way back to about here. And then it'll start growing again right along here. So I'm really pleased with this clematis. Avalanche. If you want some flowers, get this clematis. In fact, talking of clematis, let's have a look at a couple of the other clematis, the montanas. This clematis is glorious. It's strong, powerful, and grows all the way up, this viburnum. I just love climbers growing up big shrubs and trees. I cut this viburnum back and the clematis down to about 5 feet just a couple of years ago. And it's grown all the way back up again. And in fact, I think that when the flowers of this clematis have died off, I think I'd better cut it back again. I don't want the viburnum touching next door neighbour's house because it can discolour paint, of course, so I'll just watch that. It makes for a good windbreak, which is why I planted these viburnum. Because between houses you tend to get a funneling of the wind. Oh, just look how tall it grows, absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, Montana's my favourite. And you can cut them back as you like and they grow back. In fact, it's grown over to this plant here. I always forget the name of this shrub here. It's quite pretty. It's sort of a new shrub. I got it a few years ago, a new variety. I like it at this time of the year and it flowers quite nicely, but it forms a thicket, like the viburnum actually. And so let's have a look here. Look at this. So here, these have gone underground and have grown from here. I've already dug quite a few out. So you have to watch that with this plant and viburnum. I've decided this darker area between houses here to put some hostas. The flowering currants, I've got 3 here. They're one of the earliest of the shrubs to flower, and these are over now. So I've planted these here as a privacy screen for next door. There's a privet hedge there, but I also like nice big shrubs between me and anybody else. Now this tree here was a rowan tree and I planted this as a privacy tree. But it died. I don't know why it died. In this area I've had about 4 shrubs die. I don't know whether there's a lingering honey fungus or what, but it died. It grew quite nice and high. So what I did, I think I showed this in another video, I planted at the base a honeysuckle. So I left the dead superstructure of the tree and planted a honeysuckle. So I've got a honeysuckle one side, and then I took a cutting of a clematis, in fact the clematis we've just seen, and planted it the other side. And in, 2 years or something, just look at this clematis now. So it's grown up the tree. And now instead of having a bare tree or a bare patch that I tried to cover over the years, I've now clothed it with a climber, 2 climbers actually. So I'm pleased with that. Nice height. I hope you've enjoyed this little look around my front garden in late April. And even though I haven't been able to, or I've been away and not done much work on the garden still does its thing. The plants still bloom. There might be a lot of weeds around, but I can soon get rid of those once I get going in the garden proper. In the next video, we'll have a look at the back garden. and I'll see you next time in Paul T's World. Bye.